And welcome to the Sunday News at 10. I'm Doug Petcash. The jury trial for a former high-ranking Caldwell police lieutenant starts tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. A federal grand jury indicted him on 4 felony counts, which came out of an FBI investigation into Caldwell police officers. 7 Investigates Morgan Romero talked to a former U.S. attorney ahead of the trial about what to expect and what it's like to prosecute civil rights cases involving law enforcement officers. Wendy Olson says 2004 was the last time a law enforcement officer was federally tried for excessive force or civil rights violations here. The officer was acquitted. Morgan also sat down with the new Caldwell police chief to learn how he's restoring trust and accountability and moving the department into the future amid this scandal.
I'm a former U.S. attorney for the District of Idaho and a nearly 25-year veteran of the Department of Justice.
Now a private attorney in Boise, Wendy Olson watches from afar as her former office takes on a high-profile civil rights case against a former high-ranking cop. Joseph Hoadley was fired from his job earlier this year as a Caldwell police lieutenant. He faces 4 federal felony charges: deprivation of rights under color of the law, destruction, alteration, or falsification of records in federal investigations, tampering with a witness by harassment, and tampering with documents. The charges stem from an FBI investigation into current and former Caldwell police officers. Court documents show the U.S. Attorney's Office will argue Hoadley had a pattern of retaliative and abusive use of force.
Oftentimes, those situations are rapidly evolving, and police officers have to make split-second judgments. It's difficult to prove that a use of force was intentionally more than was necessary. The police officers do have a fair amount of discretion and leeway in those rapidly evolving circumstances. But what the government has to prove is that the police officer knew, that Mr. Hoadley knew, that in that circumstance, he was using more force than was necessary.
The Pew Research Center found the federal government has a high conviction rate in trials or through guilty pleas. But
these color of law cases or police officer misconduct cases don't fit in to that statistic very well.
Olson says they have a harder time proving these cases beyond a reasonable doubt.
How strong do you think the government's case is with this?
Every person has a right under the 4th Amendment to the United States Constitution not to have an unreasonable seizure. And when police officers use more force than is necessary against a person that they're taking into custody or they have contact with, that's a violation of the 4th Amendment. So here, the charge is that the officer willfully used more force than was necessary, that he knew the force he was using was not necessary to a law enforcement purpose. And that traditionally has been a very difficult charge to prove because typically people were willing to give police officers sort of the benefit of the doubt. I think that's lessened a little bit over the last 10 or so years, and particularly when we've seen as potential jurors and community members video of other police officers in other places using more force than is necessary. So that's more helpful, I think, to the government's case here, and is an obstacle now for Mr. Hoadley to overcome as he faces jury.
Hoadley's accused of hitting a man he was arresting in 2017 and then writing a false report about it. Olson says through the other charges they filed, the government plans to prove Hoadley knew what he did was wrong and tried covering it up. This month, the court also granted the government permission to introduce evidence showing Hoadley used excessive force on other occasions to support its case.
I think it's a stronger case than many of these cases are when you just look at what the charges are. But of course, we have to see what people will say in court.
From your knowledge of this case, how do you anticipate trial will go, and what is the kind of the order of operations?
It will begin with jury selection, which is likely to take about half of a day. And then right after lunch on Monday, I anticipate that there will be opening statements, first by the government, and then likely by the defendant.
When charges are levied against a law enforcement officer, Olson says both sides will take extra time to ensure jurors feel comfortable judging them. Once that's buttoned up, she says a witness or 2 could also testify Monday.
I know Chuck Peterson, the defendant's attorney, had said, we don't expect this to only be a week-long trial. We expect it to go longer. In your experience, is that likely true?
I think it's hard to say how long it will go. My experience is in federal criminal cases, they typically they speed up. They go shorter than everyone anticipates.
As the defense and government prepare for trial,
the style of policing it needs to be changed a little bit in Caldwell.
The Caldwell Police Department tries to rebuild under new leadership. The chief and captain both left amid the FBI investigation this year, and a new chief started this summer.
When there's internal conflict, then it bleeds out to the community, and then the community suffers.
Rex Ingram says the FBI got him up to speed, and he openly communicates with them.
Since I took over in July, that they feel like there's a relationship now where before it was kind of adversarial, and they weren't really getting the information that they needed to be getting from the administration.
Ingram's first order of business when he took over, one-on-ones with employees. In those, he learned officers were the ones who went to the FBI to report allegations of misconduct.
It was people within the walls of this police department that actually went to the feds and said, hey, this is what's going on. Please come and investigate this stuff, because it's going nowhere. We feel like we're not getting any traction here. And so I want to commend them. I want to say how brave they are and how much courage these people have.
Why do you think they did that?
Well, from what I've been told is they really felt like they didn't have a voice here, and they felt like although certain things got addressed internally, they just didn't feel like they were going to have an objective view from the top levels of the organization, that they were going to be heard. My personal opinion is that the chief and the command may have not had their finger on the pulse.
While Ingram says the department did a lot of good work, like dramatically cutting crime and making Caldwell safer, it came at a cost.
There's something called noble cause corruption, where you have a noble cause and where the ends justify the means of getting there. And I think that over the last 20 years, this type of behavior that started off with a very noble cause turned into a corrupted, I don't care about how we get to that point, someone's going to go to jail.
Ingram says he's working on improving systems and controls within the department to prevent any potential misconduct. Since taking the job, he's worked hard to rebuild relationships with people inside the walls of Caldwell PD.
Really what I want to highlight is the good work that these men and women do, not only in the field, but the civilian staff here, the professional staff that are behind the scenes, that are the ones getting all the phone calls all day long in the office because officers are in the field.
He says he's worked to rebuild relationships with other law enforcement agencies in the Valley and with the community.
Do you think that there has been a loss of trust, though, among the community that you think needs to be restored, that as chief, you have a duty and obligation to better enhance?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of folks that may have lost trust with us. They were on the fence of trusting the police or not trusting the police.
To restore trust and credibility, Ingram brought in an independent internal affairs investigator to look into potential police policy violations.
What I want the community to see is the fact that we are prioritizing them right now. And despite all the things that are going on, they need to know that they can trust the police department and that we are truly believing in taking care of the community.
That was 7 Investigates investigative reporter Morgan Romero reporting. Ingram is changing the department's core values. On the walls in the building, he first got rid of "Take Care of Us," which was above the line, "Take Care of the Community," and he got rid of the last value, "Address the Evil." He wants the department to come up with its own new core values. Ingram also disbanded the Street Crimes Unit, which sources say the FBI mostly focused on in its investigation and which Hoadley used to lead because of a lack of patrol resources. He's reorganizing and restructuring the agency and will rename the specialized team once it is staffed, since it carries a negative connotation.